Mr. President.
The Senator for Louisiana.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to talk a few minutes today about 5G, the Federal Communications Commission, and swamp creatures. We've all heard a lot about 5G. 5G is just incredibly fast internet. It'll make possible things like driverless cars, telemedicine, the Internet of Things. Now, I want to caution all of us, Mr. Chairman, these things are not going to happen overnight. In fact, some parts of our country already have 5G, and we don't have driverless cars and the Internet of Things and long-distance surgery. These innovations are going to happen over a long period of time. And in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of hype from the telecommunications companies. Why? Because they want to sell you 5G. And they're going to tell you that 5G can do all these incredible things. They're going to tell you that 5G can grow hair, that 5G can cure erectile dysfunction, that 5G can do this and it can do that. And look, I want to be of record as saying 5G is going to be extraordinary, but it's not going to happen overnight. And the emergency that some of our telecommunication companies are trying to create is not nearly the emergency that really exists, because they have something they want to sell you. I'm not putting them down. That's free enterprise. How does 5G work? Well, it's wireless technology. And when I have 5G on my phone and you have 5G on your phone, we communicate, whether it's 5G wireless technology or otherwise, through radio waves. Radio wave goes from my phone to your phone, and it carries data. It's called electromagnetic radiation, but all it is really radio waves. And they're all different kinds of radio waves. It depends on the frequency. Now, you know who owns those radio waves? The FCC doesn't. The telecommunications companies which use those radio waves don't. The federal government doesn't, except in this sense. You own those radio waves. The American taxpayer owns those radio waves, and they are incredibly valuable because telecommunications companies line up when the FCC has new radio waves available for them. They line up to bid on those radio waves, which they can use. We call that spectrum. Now, there's a certain type of radio wave going through the air, or spectrum, if you will, that is perfect for 5G. It's like Goldilocks porridge. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it's just right. And the telecommunication companies want to use that C-band, we call it, or mid-range spectrum. I'm going to call it C-band. They want the FCC to license it to them. Well, right now, using that spectrum, that C-band, remember this is these are the radio waves, the spectrum that are just perfect for 5G. Right now, using this C-band spectrum are a number of satellite companies, most of which are foreign-owned. The major satellite companies that are using it right now happen to be domiciled in Luxembourg. Wonderful country, wonderful people. You know what they paid to use that spectrum to the American taxpayer? Nothing. Zero. Nada. And you say, well, how did that happen? Kennedy, you just told me that these radio waves are very valuable and that telecommunications companies are lined up to lease them. How did the foreign satellite companies get the C-band for nothing that they're using right now? I don't know. It wasn't this FCC, but some FCC just gave it to them. Said, here, use it for free. I wasn't there. I'm not necessarily criticizing them. I'm just telling you, they got it for nothing. But they didn't get a license. They don't have a lease. They have a privilege to use it. And in the fine print of the document that gives them this privilege, at any time the FCC can take it back. Because the foreign satellite companies don't have a property interest. They don't own it. They don't have a lease. They didn't pay anything for it. They just have the privilege to use it until the FCC wants to take it back. Now, the foreign satellite companies, and I'm not criticizing them, God bless them, they're making a lot of money using this spectrum that belongs to the American taxpayer for free. Well, this is the way it's been for a while, but now some telecommunications companies like Verizon and others, good companies, they said, we need that C-band, FCC. We need that C-band to use for 5G. Well, the satellite companies, I'll call them the Luxembourg satellite companies, once again, good people in Luxembourg, good country. They said, well, we're using the C-band right now. We don't want to give it up to the telecommunications companies. But we'll make you a deal. They went to the FCC. The satellite company said to the FCC, we're using the C-band right now, and even though we didn't pay a single solitary dime for it, we know the telecommunications companies want it to implement 5G, so here's what we'll do. You FCC, give us the C-band. Give it to us. And we will turn around and make sure that the telecommunication companies get to use it. We'll lease it to them. And the amount of money that the foreign satellite companies would have made was about $70 billion. I call it the bank job robbery. Remember that movie came out in 2008? The Bank Job? It was a 2008 heist movie. It was about the 1971 Baker Street robbery in London. I call this proposal the bank job robbery. I don't see how the foreign satellite companies made the proposal with a straight face. Give us this C-band that belongs to the American people and just give it to us, and we're going to sell it to the telecommunications companies and pocket the $70 billion. And you know what? Our FCC almost did it. They were this close. And they said, oh, we got to do this because we got to get this C-band to the telecommunication companies because it's an emergency and we've got to get 5G tomorrow. And so let's just give the satellite companies who are using it now, didn't pay a red dime for it, let's give them the spectrum that belongs to the American people and let them sell it to the telecommunications and pocket the $70 billion because our hair's on fire and we have to do it. Swamp creatures. They came this close to stealing $70 billion from the American people. But they didn't pull it off. Because a number of members of the United States Senate and the United States House of Representatives started raising fresh hell. Fresh hell. I went to see the President of the United States. I said, Mr. President, you know what's going on here? Here you are every day saying, buy American. We have to take care of Americans first. Doesn't mean we don't care about the rest of the world. But we got to buy American. And your FCC over here is giving away this C-band to Luxembourg satellite companies. He said, what in God's name? He was like Rocket Man. He got mad. I don't speak for the president, but I'm just telling you what happened. So the FCC, to its credit, they backed off. They said, no, we're not going to give it away. We're going to do what they should have done in the first place, and that's auction it off. They're going to hold an auction like on eBay. And these satellite companies, or rather these telecommunication companies, can come in and bid. And if the FCC would do it right, we would take in $70 billion for the American taxpayer, and we could use that money to implement rural broadband. And then everybody's happy. And it would have been great. But no. Here comes the Baby Driver heist. You see that movie, Baby Driver? Now there's a new proposal on the table. The chairman of our FCC, who's a good man, by the way, I'm going to come back to him. He's come up with a new proposal. To his credit, the chairman says, we're going to bid it out. But we're going to take $15 billion of the money that comes in, and we're going to give it to the foreign satellite companies. For what? They don't own it. They don't have a license. They just have a privilege. He's going to give $5 billion to them to relocate to different spectrum, and then he's going to give them $10 billion, that's 9 zeros, and walking around money, just to go away. That's why I call it the Baby Driver heist. That's a great movie. Did you see that? Starring Jamie Foxx. Wonderful movie. Now, let me say this about the FCC chairman. He is a friend of mine. And he is smart as a whip. He went to Harvard undergrad, honors degree, Chicago Law School, Chicago Law Review, worked as an executive at Verizon Communications for a while. I consider him a friend, and I have the utmost respect for him, and I thank him for finally agreeing to do a public auction and not giving the C-band away to the foreign satellite companies. But as much as I respect the chairman, I wouldn't take him with me if I was going to buy a car, because he'd pay the full sticker price. If I needed somebody to explain string theory to me, or the Doppler effect, or quantum engineering, or genome sequence, I'd probably go to the chairman of the FCC because he is that smart. But I don't agree with him that he's made a good deal to give $10 billion away to these foreign satellite companies. $10 billion of American taxpayer money that ought to be going to things like rural broadband. And the chairman's going to present that to the FCC to vote on February 28th. And he says he's got the votes to pass it. I can tell you this is not going to be unanimous. And it's not going to be non-controversial to give away $15 billion to somebody who doesn't have a property interest. He says we got to do it because we're in a race with China. Okay, I agree with that. And your point is? He says, well, if we don't do it, the satellite companies are going to sue us. That's another straw man. Let me tell you something. FCC gets sued every day. You know what the FCC chairman needs to tell the satellite companies? Hey, you need me to draw you a map to the courthouse? Go sue. We get sued every day. But I'm not going to give you $15 billion to go away of taxpayer money because it's wrong. And I'm not sure the FCC has the authority to do this. Last time I checked, it was Congress that appropriates money, not the Federal Communications Commission. Now, I told you that the FCC chairman's proposal is to give the foreign satellite companies $5 billion to buy new satellites and to move to a new spectrum, and $10 billion just to go away because, oh, we're scared of a lawsuit. We're scared of a lawsuit. I don't know how he arrived at $10 billion to give to them. Will somebody give me $10 billion? Why not $11 billion? Why not $8 billion? Why not $7 billion? No explanation. We're just going to give them $10 billion of taxpayer money, and they're going to go away. Now, of course, the satellite companies, they're happy as clams. They're happy as a gopher in soft dirt because they're getting $10 billion for nothing. And they're also getting $5 billion to buy new satellites. But if you check, all the satellites now are worn out, so they'd have to buy new satellites anyway, 5G or not. The FCC needs to wait. On February 28th, they need to announce and vote to have the public auction, as they have promised. It'll be held in December of this year, but there's absolutely not a single solitary reason why the chairman of the FCC has to put a vote in front of the FCC to give away $15 billion of taxpayer money. We can negotiate a better deal, Mr. Chairman. We can negotiate a better deal. The chairman of the FCC does not need to become known as the $15 billion man. He needs to hold up and let's talk to the satellite companies and negotiate a better deal. Now, if he's not willing to do that, he needs to at least tell President Trump, because you know who's going to get blamed for this? The president. So it won't be his fault, but he's going to get blamed for it because it happened on his watch. And here he is, out talking about, the American economy, and we've got to protect our economy, and we've got to buy American first. Doesn't mean we don't love the rest of the world, but his FCC is just giving away $15 billion of taxpayer money, to our friends and foreign satellite companies. And the president will get blamed. So I'm hoping the FCC at least goes and see him and tell him what they're going to do. Because when the American public finds out about this, you're not going to be able to find the FCC members who came up with this idea. You're not going to be able to find them with a flashlight, with a map, with a search party. You won't be able to find them with Google. They're going to be hiding. It's an embarrassment. Now, they may have the votes to do this, Mr. President, but I'm not giving up. I've got a bill along with Senator Schumer. Yes, Chuck and I are working on a bill together. Senator Cantwell, Senator Schatz, and we're going to have some others on the bill that says, look, this is Congress's decision, not FCC's decision. And it would allocate a much more modest sum to these foreign satellite companies. And I'd like the FCC, if it would, to step back, continue on with its auction planning, and give us a chance to negotiate on behalf of the American taxpayer. I'm going to close with this point, Mr. Chairman. Not a single day passes in this chamber that I don't hear one of us, Democrats and Republicans, talking about the deficits. And boy, are they high, $22 trillion and climbing. We borrow $1 million a minute to run this place. $1.4 billion a day. That's how much more we spend than we take in. And we are mortgaging our kids' future. And everybody talks about it. And we've got to do something about it. Because we're like a problem gambler chasing his losses. And Some say we're like a drunk sailor, but we're not. We're worse than a drunk sailor. A drunk sailor stops spending when he runs out of money. We don't. We just borrow. And here we are in the middle of all of this. Our Federal Communications Commission is going to give away $15 billion. And our chairman henceforth will be known as the $15 billion man. If they do this without telling the president, without consulting with Congress, and without trying to negotiate a better deal for the American taxpayer, then we ought to change their name from the Federal Communications Commission to the Federal Sucker Commission, because that's all they are.